Before we begin, tell us where you are watching from, and if this story touches your heart, please subscribe. Officer Kestrel Hadley had spent 12 years observing the silent language of working dogs. Yet nothing in her tenure prepared her for the forensic chilling reality of that February morning. At 6:47 a.m., beneath a sky the color of a bruised plum, a call fractured the silence of the department. A police dog had fallen through the ice. The reports were anomalous. Despite every tactical effort, the animal was refusing salvation. Every time the rescue teams approached, the Belgian Malinois became a sentinel of aggression, barking with a rhythmic, sharp violence at the very shelf of ice that threatened to swallow him. He was not a creature in a panic. He was a witness delivering a verdict. The dog was Athos, a 9-year-old veteran who had spent 7 years as the shadow of Officer Brandt. Brandt had been more than a handler. He was the architect of Athos's world, training him in the cold disciplines of narcotics and the desperate mathematics of search and rescue. Their partnership was whispered about in the halls of the Minneapolis Police Department as something legendary, a symbiotic link forged in the heat of gunfire and the invisible threat of carbon monoxide. But 3 days prior, that link had been severed by the mundane cruelty of a car accident. Brandt was gone, killed off duty, leaving a vacuum that the department could not fill and that Athos could not comprehend. In the hollow hours of the morning, the inconsolable dog had escaped his kennel and vanished into the fog of the Twin Cities. There was a secret, however, hidden in the forensic layers of Officer Brandt's final months. He had been a man caught in the machinery of a bitter divorce, fighting for the right to see his teenage daughter, Ember. Every morning, under the cover of his early patrols, he would meet her at a secluded point on Lake Minnetonka. It was an unauthorized ritual, a desperate attempt to preserve a father's bond without the interference of a court's gavel. On the night of his death, he had promised to meet her at dawn. He never arrived. Ember, unaware that her father was lying in a morgue, had gone to their sanctuary alone. She had been skating, a grace her father had taught her, when the fragile geometry of the ice failed. A recent warm front had turned the surface into a trap. She had plunged into the lightless depths, her screams stifled by the Minnesota mist, trapped beneath an opaque shelf of ice for 40 minutes. Athos, guided by the ghost of a scent only he could navigate, had tracked Brandt's daughter to the shoreline. When he felt the girl's presence vibrating beneath the frozen crust, he didn't hesitate. He became the first rescuer, falling through the ice himself in a desperate bid to reach her. When the emergency crews arrived, they saw only a stubborn animal refusing a pole. They did not see the red fabric of a girl's jacket drifting like a warning 10 feet beneath the surface. Officer Hadley stood on the shoreline, her binoculars steady, observing the scene with a cold, reverent focus. She noted the pattern. Athos was not swimming for survival. He was marking a location with a precise, haunting cadence. Mark, mark, mark. Fire Chief Rollins argued the dog was simply drowning, but Hadley sensed the weight of a different truth. She demanded 2 minutes to check the area the dog was defending. Crawling across the groaning ice, her breath forming white ghosts in the air, she reached the edge. Athos whined, his eyes locking onto hers with a devastating clarity. When her flashlight beam cut through the murky water, it illuminated the evidence. A flash of red. A child. The lakefront erupted into a rhythmic, sharp reckoning. Chainsaws roared, their blades biting into the ice and spraying frozen shards like diamonds into the air. Kestrel herself was plunged into the knives of the water as the shelf gave way, but she didn't retreat. She found the vibration of a hand knocking back from the underside of the ice. A heartbeat in a tomb. When the square of ice was finally lifted away, they found Ember Pike. She was blue, her life suspended in the cryogenic stasis of the lake. After a minute of compressions that felt like an eternity, the girl coughed, water erupting from her lungs as she returned to the world of the living. The rescue of the girl was a triumph, but for Athos, the verdict was still in doubt. As Ember was rushed to an ambulance, the dog lay motionless on the shore, his body temperature having plummeted to 89 degrees. At the emergency clinic, a forensic examination revealed a deeper tragedy. A spinal tumor, a silent growth that had been hidden for months. The trauma of the cold and the physical exertion had caused a catastrophic swelling. Athos was paralyzed in his rear legs. The veterinary team, led by Dr. Yates, presented the chilling options. Surgery was a gamble with impossible odds. Without it, the dog's life was over. Hadley stood by the table, her hand on Athos's head, feeling the weight of his 7 years of service. She argued that a dog who had saved a life deserved the right to fight for his own. The surgery lasted 3 hours, a tense, atmospheric silence filling the waiting room as officers from the department gathered in an unofficial vigil. They spoke of Brandt. They spoke of the bond. When Yates finally emerged, she delivered a guarded prognosis. The tumor was gone, but the nerves were a mystery. The miracle occurred 3 days later. Ember, still fragile but recovering, came to the clinic. She knelt by the kennel and spoke to the dog who had tracked her through the dark. She thanked him for not giving up, for being the bridge back to her father. As she stroked his muzzle, Athos's back leg moved, a deliberate, rhythmic shift. He pulled himself toward her, a witness to his own recovery. In the quiet reflection of the months that followed, the department convened to decide Athos's future. He would never return to active duty. The limp was a permanent mark of his sacrifice. Captain Reeves stood before the officers and announced that while many had applied to take him, the home had already been chosen. Ember Pike stood at the back of the room. She spoke of her father's best friend, of the guardian who had protected what Brandt loved most. The department rose in a unanimous, silent verdict of support. As the sun set over the training facility on his final day, Kestrel watched Athos walk toward Ember's car. She realized then that heroism is rarely found in the medals presented in bright rooms. It is found in the quiet, terrifying decision to stay when the ice is breaking. It is found in the loyalty that refuses to leave a partner's family behind, even when the world is freezing over. Justice had been served, not by a court, but by a dog who understood that some promises are stronger than death itself. Athos was going home, not just as a survivor, but as a living piece of the man he had loved.